The Rams are in camp. This is RamView.
It's hot out there, but let's blow them off the line of scrimmage.
Headline, Los Angeles.
Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Terosian, and this is RamView, the July 26, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident? Need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues? Get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And also by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. Awesome to be back in the house today. I am coming on early. We are in the throes of a Del Scorcho here in LA. And to do this show right, I need to do it when the room is cool. Even if I do it later in the day, that means I got to have my air conditioner on. And, you know, as much as I strive to be professional, I do want to do my best. Having the air conditioner on in the background wouldn't be very professional. Want to say welcome to some new subscribers. Thank you so much. You encourage us. Thank you for clicking on. We come on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we are just trying to bring you the best Ram material possible during the dead period. Although the dead period is kind of slowing down as the Rams opened camp, and we're going to get to that presently, plus the Kistler Law trivia question of the day, looking at some Rams history, and then also taking a look at, I believe, Week 16 with the Rams matchup at SoFi against the New Orleans Saints. And we've been doing that, working through the Rams schedule, episode by episode, week by week, taking a look at the defenses they're facing, not discussing the offenses, and then projecting where we see they're going to finish. Right now, I have the Rams at 7-7 and facing New Orleans at home. So we'll get to that. Real quick here, a scary moment. I don't have any updates on it, but it is a place where, hey, I have my issues with COVID. I have my issues with the vax. I have my issues with mandates and masks and all. We all have our stuff, right? But one of the things I'm just not going to dwell on is whether or not Bronny James got the jab and his cardiac arrest yesterday was equated to that in any way. Let's just pray for the kid, right? You don't even have to like LeBron James, but man, you got to care for a parent who's caring for their kid. So let's just keep him in prayer. If you want to complain about something, how do you give Jaylen Brown, the Boston Celtics, 5 years, 304 million rocks? He's going to make more money than Justin Herbert. Now, Justin Herbert is among the elite in the NFL. Jaylen Brown is the number 2 guy on his team, and he's a little bit inconsistent. 5 years, 304 rocks. Where does the NBA get that money? I don't know. Sounds like they're shanghaiing somebody. Anyway, wanted to throw that out there. Yes, I am still rooting against the women's team. Go Netherlands, little Dutch crunch today. Or what day is it they're playing the Netherlands? So, yeah, I'm not a big soccer fan in the sense that I like soccer for the world. I do not like soccer for America. Anyway, good. Desperate dead period material. OBJ may retire. That is desperate dead period material. Desperate dead period material number 2. Kirk Cousins is a really nice guy, and I'm not even being sarcastic. When you're desperate, right, I'm watching Last Chance U. I'm watching old NFL film stuff. I'm watching Quarterbacks on Netflix. And yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting show. It's kind of up close and personal to a quarterback that's Hall of Fame bound in Patrick Mahomes, a quarterback who's kind of middle of the road, who's very competent in Kirk Cousins, and a guy who's kind of struggling to hang on to his career at Marcus Mariota. So it is an interesting show. And you can't help but watch this and then go, oh, man, I want Kirk Cousins to be happy. He deserves to be happy. He seems like a really good dude. His teammates like him. I just wouldn't take him over Matthew Stafford. There we go. I am dealing with some Ram fans who are suffering from the anti-Stafford syndrome, and I'm working my best to change that, and we'll get forward with that. Around the NFL. Cool. Justin Herbert signed a massive 5-year extension. I think it's somewhere at 267 rocks, someplace in there. He's going to be making 52 rocks a year for a long time to come. and everyone's wondering how that's going to affect the Joe Burrow update. But when I saw Justin Herbert sign, it just dawned on me. You think about teams like the Bears, who have been in the quarterback wilderness ever since Sid Luckman, right? They had a little blip there with Jim McMahon, but they just haven't found that quarterback, right? And I think they have in Justin Fields. They're hoping they have. You look at a team like the Taxkins, Sonny Jurgensen, Bill Kilmer, Joe Theismann. But then after that, yes, they won a Super Bowl. They won a Super Bowl with Doug Williams. They won a Super Bowl with Mark Rippon, but none of those guys were in place very long. And they just keep running through people like Jason Campbell and others, and they can never seem to get it right. And they're still looking. You look at the Dolphins since Dan Marino retired, and they're still, Tua, are kind of shaky on that. Even the Lions went from Bobby Lane all the way until now. They traded Bobby Lane in the 50s to the Steelers. Bobby Lane all the way to Matthew Stafford when they drafted him in 2009. They were constantly in search of that franchise quarterback. And then you can look at the San Diego, Los Angeles again, Chargers. Look what the Bolts have had. Jack Kemp, John Hadle, Dan Fouts. Now, people are going to say Stan Humphries. Stan Humphries is the only one that took them to a Super Bowl. They drafted Drew Brees, went to Phillip Rivers, and now they have Justin Herbert. Literally, this entire 21st century, they literally had Phillip Rivers, Justin Herbert, and a little bit of Drew Brees, right? There was a little bit of a wasteland there between Stan Humphries and getting to the Drew Brees period, the Ryan Leaf saga. They brought in Jim Harbaugh. They tried the John Freeze stuff, Mark Vlasic, all that stuff. But literally, Hadle, Fouts, Rivers, now Herbert, these are all decade-long quarterbacks. And you think how hard it is to find a quarterback in this league, and look, the Bolts always seem to get one. And it must be some old AFL karma, that they keep opening that playbook and going deep, from Coryell to Sid Gilman to all the stuff in between. And you just have to wonder, there's some good mojo there in the quarterback room. There's just no good mojo with the rest of the organization. Spanos. I'm sorry, I had a cough in my head. But Spanos. There we go. I cleared it. So I don't know. Just interesting. Must be very, you think about how the Chargers season ended last year. Yeah. How do you remain a Charger fan? Well, you have great quarterbacks: Kemp, Hadle, Fouts, Humphries, Brees, Rivers, and now Justin Herbert. So good for them. They signed him. And he's going to be around for a while. Keep people coming out to see them play. Saquon Barkley signed his 1 year, 11 rock deal. He got a $2 million bonus. I just think it's kind of funny because Josh Jacobs just left Las Vegas. And I'm wondering after the thing if they thought, hey, man, maybe we're in this together. And I think Saquon Barkley realized he was never going to get this money back. And so I got to sneeze. Allergies. So forgive me. So Saquon Barkley, he signs, and I don't know. Josh Jacobs now is kind of left twisting in the wind because if Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are both out, maybe there's some leverage there. Now Josh Jacobs is kind of left twisting in the wind, and I'm wondering if Jacobs feels like Barkley let him down. I'm just speculating, but the thing is, you're not going to get the money back. The agreement between the players and the owners is going for another 7 years. Nothing's going to change. You're just going to hurt yourself. It is the way of the West. It is how things are, and you better take the money now because you're not going to get it back if you sit out. So, yeah, I was curious about how Josh Jacobs felt. And getting back to that, what I talked about on Monday, they're not giving big money to the running backs anymore. I will amend that if there's a running back like Marshall Faulk, Marcus Allen, Eric Dickerson, or Walter Payton out there, I think they'll be getting the big contract. There's still room for all-timers. I don't know of a running back, maybe OJ. I don't know, maybe Jim Brown, anybody that ever ran the ball like Eric Dickerson. I've never seen it. Or as versatile as Marshall Faulk or Marcus Allen. And Marshall Faulk had a lot of Marcus Allen in him. Faster though, and but Marcus Allen did everything. They even said he threw the ball. Well, I saw him throw the ball. Yeah, he threw the ball, and Falk did everything, and then Walter Payton, of course, did everything. And I don't know, is Derrick Henry that guy? Is Saquon Barkley that guy? I don't even know if LaDainian Tomlinson was that guy. I'm just throwing it out there. But if an all-timer comes along, I think they're going to get paid. And it'd be interesting to see someone like an Eric Dickerson with that talent. If he had been in, I think he was in the best offense he could have been in for his time. But could you imagine if using Eric Dickerson? And the Rams used him a lot his first year as a pass catcher, not so much after. If he would just had a little more creativity in the Rams offense, what that would have meant in terms of his perception. He is one of the greatest of all time. You don't have to like him, but I kind of do. But you got to appreciate his gifts. So that's something to think about going forward, is that none of these backs, Josh Jacobs, they're not touching that next level. They're just very good. More NFL news. Brock Purdy was cleared to throw for the 49ers, but they said he's going to be on a pitch count. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was carted off the field for the Lions. He was the guy that left the Eagles, went to the Lions. He hurt himself with nobody around, and he was carted off the field. They say the injury is not as severe as they thought, so they're expecting to be back. For the Raiders, Jimmy G is ready to rumble. We'll see what happens there. The Raiders also signed Marcus Peters, and the Saints re-signed Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham kind of disappeared with a couple years in Green Bay and a couple years in Chicago. He's 36, but he was a scary dude early in his career with Drew Brees and the Saints, and he's back with the Saints right now. We're going to talk about the Saints a little bit later with Derek Carr throwing. Maybe Jimmy Graham has one last a moment, in his career. Cowboys signed Trayvon Diggs to a 5-year, $97 Rocky extension. I'll say this about Trayvon Diggs is he makes plays, but you know who else made plays? Janoris Jenkins made plays. Janoris Jenkins, now Jackrabbit Jenkins, I think he's still trying to hang on in the league. He made a lot of great plays for the Rams, but he gave up a lot of big plays. And I prefer that more steady, consistent, less spectacular corner. And Trayvon Diggs gets eaten up a whole lot. Stephon Gilmore's going to be on the other side of him this year in Dallas. So he is going to have passes funneled his way, because I think Stephon Gilmore is the more complete corner if he can repeat what he did in Indianapolis last year. And so that'll be interesting to see. Not a real big Trayvon Diggs fan. He makes the spectacular. He's a splash guy. I don't think he's a consistent guy. Ram news we saw yesterday. It was just all over the internet, open to everyone to see. The interviews with Sean McVay, Rob Havenstein, Michael Hoyt, and Jacoby Durant. And they were good interviews to watch. You see McVay, he looks loose, he looks thing. My only problem with McVay is he says it's over, but if he's to come back and, have to think about whether he's coming back another year, I would honestly fire him. I know that sounds heresy, but if I'm an organization, I'm not going to be held hostage by one person. So he says that's over. He has said before that is over, but I don't want to hear year to year whether he's going to come back or not. Just, are you in or are you out? And let's just go. If you're not going to commit and I got to wait a couple months, you're toast. I'm firing you. We're moving on. But he looks refreshed. He looks good. So we'll see. He is the best coach in my lifetime with the Rams. Now, looking at the rest of the players interviewed, Rob Havenstein, total pro. You love watching him. Suffers no foolishness. Michael Hoyt looks like a guy that is focused. And Michael Hoyt is interesting because he's in this because he loves football. The guy went to Brown. He wasn't even drafted, and yet he's played himself on the edge of a starting position here in the NFL on a permanent basis. He filled in at the end of last year. He's going into camp, penciled in right now. He was that guy that's all business. And I really liked Kobe Durant's style. I really did. I thought, you just hope he stays healthy. He could be that guy. He definitely looks like a leader. I don't know if it was McVay or the front office or PR that picked these three, but those three were great representations and in terms of players that are committed and focused to this year, which was really interesting because it was in contrast. I don't know if I was doing the show last summer. I think I wrote about it. I was doing more Ram columns in those days, but no one likes to click and follow a link. I get it. It's okay. But Terrell Lewis gave an interview, the former Ram edge linebacker, last summer, and they were interviewing him. And I remember I just didn't see any eye of the tiger in him. They even mentioned how he was a healthy scratch in Super Bowl 56. And if that's not the most telling thing about your future, I don't know what. And if he believed it was wrong, he should have, I thought he should have came to that interview the same kind of platform they used last year. He should have came to it angry and showed he's out to prove something, and he just didn't have it. And sure enough, before the season was even done, Terrell Lewis was put in the street. And great body, great physical ability, but unless you got that motor, unless you got that, what Dennis Harrah used to call that butt kicker, you're not going anywhere. News was the Rams put tight end Hunter Long and rookie offensive lineman Warren McClendon Jr. on the PUP list. Of course, that means they're still counting towards the 90. Rams can bring them back anytime. It's nothing too serious right now. We'll see how it plays out. Just, hey, more wet reps for the other tight ends in that tight end room for a little while. And Warren McClendon, I don't know, that's good news for A.J. Akuri on making this roster. So news around the NFL concerning the Rams. Bobby Evans, who was signed by the Vikings after the Rams cut him last year, he was re-signed for a second go with Minnesota. Of course, Kevin O'Connell's there, so he knows Bobby Evans. They also signed Jack Snyder, who was in camp with the Rams last year and got a lot of playing time before he was put in the street. So Evans and Snyder, all right. I'm sure Kirk Cousins is excited about that. Former Rams wide receiver Mike Thomas. If you remember Mike Thomas, right at the beginning of the Rams' return to L.A., he was a special teamer, wide receiver, made some catches, a few. He played with the Rams for 4 years, 2016 through 2019. He was on the Super Bowl team. He got cut by the Ravens yesterday. He had a nice 3-year run with Cincinnati Bengals. He played against the Rams in the Super Bowl, so he's 0 for 2 in the Super Bowl as a player. But he was cut by the Ravens, and he's in the street now. And so it'll be interesting to see where he's going. He's, again, a classic NFL player. Comes in, plays about 7 seasons. I mean, that's a lot. Special teamer. And now he's getting closer to 30. And you're wondering, like, is that it? And not everyone gets the Hall of Fame career, but you can say he played in 2 Super Bowls. I mean, that's a heck of a resume. I wish I had just put on a uniform, let alone played. But he played in 2 Super Bowls. So just remembering Mike Thomas. Okay, the Kistler Law trivia question of the day before we get to the break as we come up to the 17-minute mark. All right, the Kistler Law trivia question of the day. Everyone knows Tyler Higbee is the Rams' all-time leading receiver as a tight end. I think he's got 300 and something. Second is Lance Kendricks, who had a nice run with the Rams in St. Louis and his first year back in LA. I think it was 2013 through 2016. And he caught 200 passes. And then recently, this last couple weeks, I mentioned Billy Truax. He was the Rams tight end through most of the 60s, and he caught 180 passes. Okay, that's cool. But this is a little deeper trivia. Which of these following tight ends that I'm going to mention had the most catches in their Rams career? And so A, Bob Klein, B, David Hill, C, Pat Curran, D, Damone Johnson, E, Terry Nelson. Those are some blasts from the past there. Bob Klein was first-round pick out of USC. He replaced Billy Truax. David Hill was the brother of Jim Hill. He was a pretty good pass-catching tight end with the Lions, and he came to the Rams, mostly a blocker. Pat Curran, he had a little blurb there with Pro Throws Chargers in 75 and 76 after a 4 or 5 season run with the Rams, mostly as a special teamer. Damone Johnson had a nice run with the Rams in the 80s. And, of course, Terry Nelson is the one that replaced Bob Klein and as the Rams blocking tight end. So out of all these guys, all pros there, which of those guys had the most catches in their Ram career? Bob Klein, A, B, David Hill, C, Pat Curran, D, Damone Johnson, E, Terry Nelson. And we'll answer that question for you at the end of the show. All right. I'm Joe Tarosian, and this is RamView. And I was a sports writer for 21 years. I still am, kind of. And now I do RamView, thanks to our sponsors like Kistler Law and Temple City Auto. And I write books, and I have several books on Amazon. Just type in joetarosian.com and you'll see them. You'll notice I'll have 2 football books that were well received. But also you'll notice some books of faith, Christian books, Christian novels. I am a pastor in my day job. I run a small church called Burbank Faith, and you could follow us right here on YouTube at the Burbank Faith virtual channel that is right here. Click on that, and if you have any questions about that, you could ask me. But by doing RamView, I get to support myself so I can stay in ministry, and that's kind of what I do. I was one of the founding members at Mid-Valley Sports. Tim and Dwayne are still there. They are covering the San Diego Chargers. They are covering the Los Angeles Chargers. They are in the room, and I get to do RamView. So I'm really happy with the way things are. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for clicking on. Anytime you have a question, send it in there. I'm happy to answer it. No question's a dumb question. That's one of the things we don't do is the KBM media tries to minimize you and make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, that you don't know what you're seeing. And we know as Ram fans, when we watched that Ram defense last year, we goes, it sucks. You know, we need to answer some questions here about how soft they're playing in coverage. And someone will get on here and say, well, you don't know anything. It's like, yeah, you do. You do. You know more than you think. And I'm happy to engage in those questions with you. Okay, so on this date, July 26th in Ram history, in 1972, Carroll Rosenbloom officially completes the deal, which is like a trade, with Robert Irsay to acquire the Rams. After Rams owner Dan Reeves passed away, Robert Irsay gained control, and Carroll Rosenbloom, who had owned the Colts through those glory years with John Unitas, they traded franchises. Rosenbloom comes to the Rams. Irsay takes over the Colts, and that was a journey for them all the way through the 70s and the midnight move to Indianapolis and such. But Carroll Rosenbloom took over, and that, of course, started a great chain initially. But in terms of how the Rams did after Rosenbloom took over, got Don Klosterman in charge. But then, of course, we know what happened in that situation. Born on this day in 1920, he would be 103 years old if he was alive. It was Bob Waterfield. I'm not going to do a great dive into Bob Waterfield, former UCLA quarterback. He was pretty boy. I think he played from 44 or 45 all the way to 1951. He didn't play super long, but he won 2 titles for the Rams. And he's legendary. He also spent some time as a head coach, married famous movie actresses. But it's hard to believe because Waterfield was very, very iconic when I was a kid growing up. Never saw him play until much later because I saw highlights. But Bob Waterfield would be 103 if he was around today. Also born on this day in 1934 is Tommy McDonald. Tommy McDonald passed away a few years, but he was a Hall of Fame wide receiver, and he was one of the last guys. He played from 57 to 69, I think it was. He was one of the last guys that played in the NFL without a face mask. And so he spent 2 seasons with the Rams. Now, he was with the Eagles when they won a title, and he bounced around a little bit. But Tommy McDonald had a great career. He might have been Cooper Kupp before there was a Steve Largent. And so with the Rams in 1965, now you got to remember, this is a run-heavy league in 65, and the Rams weren't very good. But in 65, Tommy McDonald had one of his best years of his career. He caught 67 passes for 1,036 yards and 9 touchdowns. He was all pro that year at the age of 31. The next year, he caught 55 passes for 714 yards and 2 touchdowns. And so he had 2 really solid years at the end of his career playing for the Rams, and he deserves mention because he is a Hall of Famer. And he was traded by the Rams to the Falcons in 67 for a 4th-round draft pick in 1969. And within a few months, the Rams traded that draft pick back to the Falcons for some scrubs and some other picks. And that 4th-rounder in 1969, the Falcons drafted tight end Jim Mitchell. And Jim Mitchell had an all-pro season or Pro Bowl season in 72, played for 11 years, had a really nice career. He was one of the tougher tight ends of the 70s. And, of course, no one got thrown too much in those days unless you were, Raymond Chester or Dave Casper or Ted Kwolek or, later on Kellen Winslow. But Jim Mitchell. So I thought that was interesting that we needed to mention Tommy McDonald, who, if he was around today, would be 66. He would be about 89 years old, and he passed away. Also born on this day in 1996, Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson turns 27, and so it's make or break for Van Jefferson. I like Van Jefferson. My problem with Van Jefferson is he doesn't contest for the ball. He makes the catch most of the time when he's there. He runs the routes. He's got a little bit of speed, but he's just not one of those guys that goes and grabs the ball. And so that's my problem with Van Jefferson, but he's 27. I hope he has a great year, and he has a fantastic year. The Rams don't sign him, and then they get some really good compensation picks for him. Okay, on this day, I'm sorry, not on this day, tomorrow, since we're not on tomorrow, I'm doing July 27th. July 27th, 2016, the Rams released Nick Foles, quarterback. If you watched Hard Knocks in 2016, you actually see Jeff Fisher making the call saying, yeah, we're releasing you. They had already drafted Jared Goff #1. Yeah, but I thought that was pretty cool. Born on July 27th in 1939 is the late Irv Cross from NFL Today fame. And of course, Rams tight end Bob Klein was born on July 27th, 1947. Klein is, of course, part of our trivia question for today. And also, this is the key one I wanted to mention. This is the one that got me going here. On this day in 2021, not on this day, on July 27th, 2021, former Ram linebacker Tony Guillory passed away at the age of 78. What's the big deal about mentioning Tony Guillory? He played, 3 or 4 years with the Rams, 1 year as a starter. By the time George Allen came in, he was just a special teamer. He later got traded to Philadelphia, and he played a little bit there. Well, Guillory's interesting because he made a play for the Rams. And I don't know how you are, but when you grow up and you're a Ram fan, a player could make one play and you're going to remember him forever. For me, initially, Al Clark was a backup defensive back for the Rams for about 4 years there in the mid-'70s. And he intercepted the pass on October 14th that stopped the Cowboys' drive to preserve the Rams' 37-31 win at the Coliseum. That was the Harold Jackson game. Listen to that on the radio. So I'm always going to remember Al Clark. I'm always going to remember Billy Waddy. Right now, Waddy had a little more extended career. He had some plays, but Billy Waddy's the guy that made the catch and run against the Cowboys in the playoffs in '79. So Waddy always has a place. There's a guy named Ron Smith who had a great postseason for the Rams. The next year, they traded him to the Chargers in 1979. He caught the touchdown pass from McCutcheon. So you just remember these guys. Jarrell Thomas. Jarrell Thomas was a nice running back for the Rams. Of course, he was running behind a really good offensive line. But in 1980, he had that incredible Monday night game where the Rams just smashed the Cowboys in Anaheim. And so Jarrell Thomas always has a little special place in my heart. Steve Dills has a special place in my heart. He was the guy that in 1986, after the Rams had traded for Jim Everett, and they were just kind of getting him ready, remember, they went into Chicago on a Monday night, and the Rams had just lost there that January in the NFC title game, 24-0. And Steve Dills goes in there, and he doesn't have a great game, but he makes just enough plays for Mike Lansford to kick a game-winning field goal to beat the Bears in Chicago. And I always remember that as the Steve Dills game. And, of course, Mike Jones, he's the guy that made the tackle that secured Super Bowl 34. And he didn't have a long career with the Rams, but Mike Jones, if I can get a fathead of Mike Jones behind me, I would put a fathead of Mike Jones behind me. And, yeah, I'm one of those guys that counts the St. Louis years. I tried to disown the Rams after they left, but I couldn't. And so I remained a Ram fan. And I count all those years because you know what? I want to embrace the greatest show on turf. I want to embrace Steven Jackson. So, yeah, I'm a Ram fan even in the St. Louis years. So with all that said, one player makes a play. Well, Tony Guillory is one of those guys. And I knew his name. And then when I was younger, when I was first married, I listened to KMPC. And they used to play radio blasts from previous games in history. And they played the Dick Enberg call from the end of the Rams' December 9th, 1967 game at the Coliseum against the Packers. The Packers were two-time defending champions. They won like 4 titles in 6 years or something like that. They had won the NFL title in 65. They won the Super Bowl in 66. They would eventually win the Super Bowl in 67, played in January of 68, of course, against the Raiders. But so they were the powerhouse. And George Allen came to the Rams in 66, got them on the right track. And then 67 was the breakthrough. And with 54 seconds left in that game, the Packers were up 24-20. And Donnie Anderson, the running back, was in to punt because he punted. And he was going to punt it. And the Rams would only have less than 50 seconds probably to try to get a game-winning score. Instead, in front of 76,000 fans, Guillory busts through up the middle. Tony Guillory, special teamer now, busts up the middle, and he blocks the kick. It's recovered by a traveling defensive back named Claude Crabb. He picks up the loose football, and he runs 20 yards before he's tackled by Anderson. 2 plays later, Gabriel fakes the ball to Mason and then throws to Bernie Casey for the touchdown. I still remember hearing Dick Enberg's call, And I knew of the game, but I didn't know of the game. And then Bruce Gossett kicked the conversion. The Rams won 27-24. Now, you could find this game on YouTube, greatest, what it would be, game of the week for 1967. And I would really encourage you to watch that thing. It's just a 30-minute film. And I think Jack Whitaker is calling it. But if you get to the last minute of it, when you see the Rams celebrating and you just see the joy on George Allen's face that here's a guy, he's having success with his team, and everything is so promising, right? Everything is so promising for the Rams at that moment. And you think about it, they just beat the future world champions, right? And how different history could have been if just a couple things happened differently. The Rams could have been Super Bowl II champions. That would have been kind of interesting. I love the what ifs. Maybe we need to write a what if story. But Tony Guillory was that guy. He made that play. And I could still hear Enberg's call, and just an amazing play by a player that is gone down in history and completely forgotten. But I just think sometimes you need to remember these guys. These guys make one play, and they deserve to be remembered. Okay, so with that said, let's get to the back end of the show here. It's week 16 of the 2023 season, December 21st, 2023. Saints come to SoFi. Rams lead the series all-time 42-34. Playoffs, the teams are 1-1 against each other. I pegged this early on when the schedule came out as a win for the Rams, even with Derek Carr in New Orleans. Carr is the big addition here. They brought back Jimmy Graham. Jamal Williams came over from the Lions and Bears, and so for a Packer, I'm sorry. And so, he brings life, but I don't know if he's a game changer. And Foster Moreau, they lost Jarvis Landry. And another thing that's creeping up on the Saints is their age. And that's why I look at this game as a Rams win. Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, 31. Mark May, who used to lay to the Jets, he's going to be 29. Marcus Lattimore is only 27. But Marcus Lattimore was the shutdown corner, right, that everyone talked about. He had a nice couple years, but he really fell off a cliff last year. He was 56 out of 118. Now, 56 out of 118 sounds like it's middle of the pack, but not for Marcus Lattimore. Marcus Lattimore was rated as one of the top 10 cover corners in the league, and they really don't have an alternative on the other side. And then you look at their linebacker. Demario Davis is an outstanding off-ball linebacker, but Demario Davis has been around forever, since 2012. He's 34 years old. Carl Granderson is improving on the edge, but Cam Jordan showed some age last year, and he slipped. He's 34. Cam Jordan's been around for a long time. And so when you look at this team matching up against the Rams, a healthy offensive line, I think the Rams will definitely be able to run the ball, and then that'll put pressure on these safeties. And again, thinking of week 16, is Tyrann Mathieu going to be healthy? Is Mark May going to be healthy? At 34, is Demario Davis and Cam Jordan going to be healthy? And being in SoFi, we're not in New Orleans, so it doesn't mean the Saints have to be given the win because of Katrina. Because every time the Saints win a game, it's a great shot in the arm for the city since Katrina. And I'm always dubious of going into New Orleans because it seems like everything goes their way. We won't talk about Roby Robinson there, but I do see the Rams winning this game. I think the Saints have an offense, and we'll get to the offense the next time around when we go back through this. But I see the Rams offense not being hindered by this defense. I see a lot of age. I see vulnerability at all levels. They're not embarrassing, but they're not going to be great, and they're not going to be in New Orleans. And I could see the Rams picking off this win, something like 28-10, somewhere in there. Don't hold me to that. And but yeah, that's where I see this. And so with that, the Rams would improve to 8-7 on the year. That's a successful season, right? Because we said high end, and everything goes well, the Rams could win 10 games. The baseline is 7. And so right now I'm projecting them, they could win 8 games. And then it gets kind of tough because then you're going to New York to play the Giants on New Year's Eve. And then, of course, you're closing out the season in Frisco. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens. If the Rams could pick off one more win, finish 9-8 and miss the playoffs, what a great season, right? But again, 9 wins in the NFC 9 wins in the NFC keeps you in the playoff hunt. The NFC is pretty weak this year, keeps you in the wild card hunt. And then we're going to see what progresses with the 49ers and their quarterback situation and their never-ending injuries that always seem to go on.
It was a stone group,
yes,
man.
The show was a stone group, but we're not done. We got to get to the trivia question of the day. Tyler Higbee is the all-time leading receiver for the Rams, but which of these following tight ends had the most catches in their Rams career? Which of these following tight ends had the most catches in their Rams career? A, Bob Klein, B, David Hill, C, Pat Curran, D, Damone Johnson, E, Terry Nelson. I'll give you a second to talk amongst yourselves. Tell you to check out our sponsors. Give you a chance to Google this. You should have Googled it earlier if you were watching the show. Let's look at this. Terry Nelson was a nice blocking receiver for the Rams. Got injured in 80, played in the Super Bowl in 79. He finished his career with 87 catches with the Rams. Pat Curran, who had a nice little run there with Tommy Prothro in 75, 76 for the Chargers. It was so funny. 75, 76, he got traded from the Rams to the Chargers in 75, 76, catches some 45, 30 passes, big career numbers for him. Then in 77, he's replaced by Bob Klein, who's traded to the San Diego Chargers. But Curran, in his Ram career, only caught 9 passes, more of a special teamer and kind of indicative of what the Rams were doing in those days. David Hill caught 113 passes with the Rams, and he was more blocker with the Rams, like an extended tackle. He was pretty big by the time he came to the Rams. He was key, though. He was a real important guy for the Rams in those years with Dickerson. And but he was a pass-catching tight end with the Lions in the mid-70s. But he only caught 113 catches with the passes for the Rams. Bob Klein, in his Ram career from 69 through 76, caught 128 passes and had 15 touchdowns. Pretty good when you think that he's blocking for part of that offensive line that's blocking for Willie Ellison and Lawrence McCutcheon. So in 7 seasons with the Rams, 8 seasons with the Rams, 6 of those seasons the Rams had 1,000-yard backs. Pretty interesting. But Bob Klein caught 128 passes for 15 touchdowns in his Ram career. But Damone Johnson in his Ram career caught 132 passes and scored 16 touchdowns. And Damone Johnson, of those guys, Bob Klein, David Hill, Pat Curran, and Terry Nelson, Damone Johnson is the one who caught the most passes in his Rams career, and he's probably the least remembered of any of those Rams. I think he came from Santa Monica. He played at San Luis Obispo. He was a wide receiver, but worked out so much they moved him to tight end. And he had a big year. I think it was in 87 for the Rams, caught 42 passes, 6 touchdowns. And he played with the Rams for about 7 seasons. But he was just, in those days, he was kind of the blocking guy. They brought in Pete Holohan, who was the catching guy. But Damone Johnson deserves to be remembered. 132 catches in his Ram career, more than Klein, Hill, Curran, and Terry Nelson. So good for Damone Johnson. Okay, so that is RamView for today. And that, will I say, is
it was a stone groove, my man.
And I want to say thank you to everyone that's clicking on, going to click on later, and again to our new people. But we're going to go. We're going to download this, and we're going to share it all over Spotify and everything in the day to come. And I will be back Friday. I'm Joe Tarosian. Thank you so much for clicking on. We will talk to you soon.